Welcome, everyone. My name is Shannon. Thank you for joining Snow Isle Libraries for Indigenous Tabletop. Meet the creators of Coyote and Crow. What would North America look like if European settlers had never arrived? That is the question behind Coyote and Crow, a one-of-a-kind tabletop role-playing game where players explore an alternate Earth centering Indigenous nations and cultures, rich in science, magic, and adventure. Today, we're honored to have three of the writers and artists behind Coyote and Crow with us today, where we will talk gaming, the creative process, and the importance of uplifting Indigenous voices in the tabletop community and beyond. Before we begin the presentation, we would like to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this area, the Snohomish people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society. Now let's take a moment to tend to a little housekeeping. Please keep your microphones muted until it's your chance to speak so everyone can hear our speaker and other members. Feel free to use the chat for questions for library staff. We will also use chat on our end to share links to any resources and websites mentioned today. After the presentation, we will have some time to ask some of your questions. So feel free to submit the questions in the chat at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Finally, if you would like to turn on captions for this event, you can find the instructions in the chat. Without further ado, let's turn it over to our presenters so they can introduce themselves to you all.
Derek Pound Senesna, Siitsan Uhilok, Ichiachel, Kudasana, Tachel, Itia Kais. Hi, my name is Derek Pounds. I am a member of the Samish Indian Nation, and it's a real honor here to meet you. I am one of the writers on Coyote and Crow, in addition to some other role playing games.
Barawika, Naniatsa, Wioti, Warataka, Sokani, Naituna, Albuquerque, uh, Nakani Bite. My name is Wioti Old Bear. I'm one of the writers for Coyote and Crow. I am a member of the Comanche Nation and originally from Oklahoma. I now live in our Comanche Range in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Thanks.
Sego Satirundas Yungyats. Hello, my name is Satirundas. I am a Ganyak Yahaga, known as Mohawk in the English language. My father's family is Mexican indigenous. My mom's family is from our traditional homelands in upstate New York and Ontario, Canada. I was born in the sovereign Mohawk commune of Ganyonge. And I've lived in Washington State most of my life. I moved here when I was a kid. I'm an artist on illustrator on Coyote and Crow, and I'm happy to be here with y'all.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedules to share with us. Let's go ahead and start the discussion first and foremost with what is Coyote and Crow and how did you get involved in its creation?
We're playing polite gophers. Um, I got involved with Coyote and Crow in during the very first week of the lockdown in March of 2020. I had just been laid off from my job. I'm a professional writer, but I also, for many years, was a baker. And I saw on the Imagining Indigenous Futurism's Facebook a post looking for Indigenous futurist writers interested in an RPG with any experience at all in RPGs. And I responded, and Connor Alexander, who is the man with the plan, he called me on the phone and we had a talk and I was immediately in. My job mostly was writing the central cultures and laying out the city, describing the city, and I spent a lot of time on that. And that's how I got involved. And then I was in. Derek?
Yeah, I came into Coyote and Crow process a little bit late in the process. Most of the book was already written when I came in. It was kind of a similar deal, though. It was during the lockdown. Connor was looking for writers from the Pacific Northwest who could help him create that nation for the setting. I had never done any professional writing before at that point, but I have a long background with role-playing games since I was about 9 years old, so I figured I'd throw in my hat. Um, and yeah, as far as what Coyote and Crow is, I think he gave a very good description of it at the beginning there. You know, it's this first of its kind role playing game about what North America might look like without colonization and what it might look like into our future rather than just looking at our past. So it was a real honor to get to be part of that and really enjoyed writing it.
But uh, so much like Derek, I also came into the project fairly late. Um, I heard about this project where someone was making a indigenous futurism role-playing game. I was like, oh man, that sounds awesome. I'd love to work on that, but it's probably too late. I've missed my window. And I worked on a project called Moonshot Volume 3, which is an indigenous futurism uh, anthology comic book series. And Connor saw my work in that, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in creating some artwork for the game?" And they had a couple pieces left that they still needed filling, so I got to do the artwork for one of the pieces called Ceremony, and I got to do the look of the Council of 12, the Suyata in Coyote and Crow. And Connor was very impressed with those pieces, and then asked me to create the artwork for the game guide, the game screen that you would have in front of you. So that's the largest piece of art in the game, and I got to do that. So I was pretty excited to do that. What is it? It's a chance for us to put our mark on role-playing games as our own, our own definition, not being defined by non-natives as, what is native art, what is, native existence in a future that we define. So, it's a chance to really put our mark on something and say, you know what? We don't have to be stuck in this historical past that everyone wants to pigeonhole us in. We're going to do whatever we want. And that's the thing I really like about Coyote Crow the most.
Thank you all so much. Did you want me to go ahead and share some of your artwork while we're on that?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Okay,
have
so
a few short short slides.
let me share screen. There you all are.
That's it. And if you like, I could describe what you're seeing too.
Sure.
So this piece here that they have up right there, that is the game screen. This is actually a cropped version of it. So what Connor asked for was a depiction of a party of players using the different classes in the game up against one of the iconic, monsters of Coyote and Crow, which is the Horned Serpent, which is a monster that's shared across my culture and Connor culture's northeastern, Central Eastern monster that it was a lot of fun to work on. So yeah, that was like I said, this was the biggest piece that I had done at the time. And then these are a few of the images. Stories of the Freeland was a digital only expansion series. I got to work with a two-spirit author on that series, and it's a story of you know, star-crossed lovers, essentially.
Mm.
And the piece besides that, in the gray and
Oh,
black and gray, is the ceremony piece that is in the core book. Yeah. These ones here also, the one in color is, I believe his name is Data Lasti. He's one of the iconic six that Connor created as hero characters for the world going forward with Coyote and Crow. I got to do the basic designs for all six of the characters, and he's sort of the one of like the team uncle in the group. It's a little hot headed, and then the one next to it in the black and gray is actually a piece that was done for Road to Foxpaw, which is the Stories of the Freeland story that I worked on. Yeah, and then we have another of the iconic six. Oh my God, I've blanked her name. She's the sister of Data. Their two are siblings. She's actually an amputee. One of the things in Coyote and Crow is we wanted to show that we don't abandon people in our society, and they're allowed to, grow and thrive in the society. So she's an excellent engineer, and she essentially built her own cybernetic arms. Is what we have going on there. And then the character next to her is also from Road to Foxpaw. It's one of the NPCs. And then I'll show the last one there. This one here, there's actually two of them. We have the turnarounds for a partnership between Coyote and Crow and Hero Forge. You can go to Hero Forge's website and get custom pieces built for your own 3D mini based on Coyote and Crow. There's like a whole bunch of individual pieces, parts that I got to design for that. And this is sort of like the line art breakdown they send to their 3D modelers to build out the characters. And then beside that one is Yuli, who is the sort of main character that you're trying to help in the Road to Foxpaw, which is that expansion story. Yeah.
Okay.
And as you can see, a lot of my work here is very much like high color, shiny, glowy, futuristic looking, but with a lot of touches, nods, and references to traditional clothing.
All right, I'll go ahead and stop the share now.
Yeah.
Has the Red Prophet series by Austin Scott Card influenced any part of the game development? Ever read? Oh, okay. It's a question from the chat. Has the Red
I mean Orson Scott Card.
Orson Scott Card, yeah.
I think that's it may be just a talk to text issue, but I would say I've read it and it didn't influence. I mean, for me, as one of the writers, one of our goals in writing Coyote and Crow was to write authentically about natives from a native perspective. Orson Scott Card is a very good writer. He's also a Mormon and Mormons have they have an ideological axe to grind about natives. But in general, the point was in writing Coyote and Crow from the very beginning to write from a native perspective for me. And part of about writing about our future is, well, on one hand, there's a tendency across media to depict natives in the past as relics. The other thing about the depictions of us in the past is that they are all doing service to European culture. They're they're from a European perspective, they're from a European lens, and card writes from a European lens. So no, um, this was really a from the start for me anyway, from about a depiction of natives in the future through a purely native lens. What about you, Derek?
I have not read the Red Prophet series, so I clearly wasn't inspired by that. Uh, Connor and I did talk a fair bit about what our inspirations for and what we were drawing from, and uh, Card's name never came up, so I'd be a little bit surprised if that wasn't anywhere like the core concept of the game. Um, I honestly know a lot more about like what its, role-playing game predecessors are than what its fiction predecessors are, though. So, Cronus?
Yeah, I've actually never read anything by Orson Scott Card. I just heard some of the titles, but didn't really find like what he was writing sounding interesting to me. Um, Most of my influence, as far as Coyote and Crow is concerned, comes actually from powwow culture and regalia designs, the color combinations, and stuff that we see in modern powwow, and also the those like break dancers that put LED lights into their clothing and then like dance with all the lights off. So a lot of my designs are based on indigenous cultures, influence from different regional cultures that I'm working with. Like I try to work most of my stuff either things that I have experience with, like sort of like plains powwow folks and like some northeastern tribe stuff. Like that's where I'm from. So a lot of my designs are more based in that, and like I said, just like cool technology, a little bit of sci-fi influence, most movies and stuff, but largely powwow. Like a lot of my stuff is heavily powwow influenced.
I guess my influences, I mean, when I first came into the game, I am Samish, but I still had to do a lot of research on the other cultures here in the Pacific Northwest, their histories with each other, their storytelling, and things like that. And so most of my influence came from kind of the nonfiction space of working with, historical rivalries and imagining how those would be if people were forced closer together and forced to survive together. So.
I'll go ahead and follow that up with another question. You touched on this a moment ago, Derek, but did you play tabletop role-playing games before coming to Coyote and Crow? And what was that experience like, if you did?
I did. Like I said, I've been playing role-playing games since I was 9. The experience was varied, certainly. Well, one belief that I've long held and I've shared a lot is that I believe that while the traditional role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons, has all the set dressing of Lord of the Rings, what it really is a Western. It's a group of white people trying to bring civilization to a savage land. And so a lot of times if you're telling stories like that, they'll come in conflict with your native identity. And sometimes I spoke up and sometimes I held my tongue just to keep my friends. And, like it was tough choices a lot of the way. I don't hold my tongue so much anymore, though.
I know for me, I had played as a teenager mostly with my cousins. So it was kind of a interesting thing where I didn't fail to speak up, but I did go, I did get that from my cousins. Oh, Leoti's being a killjoy again. Or, somebody will agree, somebody will disagree. So it was, let us say, thoroughly investigated by my little group of Comanche teenagers. And then as time went on and I was more focused on fiction, my children, I somehow gave birth to a whole slew of avid RPG players. And so these discussions were held, and all this thorough investigation kind of happened all over again 20 years later. And it's still happening. So it was, my kids got pulled into discussion about what I was doing and how it was going to work and all of that. So that was my children's gaming was as much an influence, or maybe more of an influence than my own gaming. And I say children, 30-year-old children, you know. So they'll be all annoyed if I depict them in a way that where people go, what are they, 9? No, no.
Millennials will forever be children. It's okay.
Yeah. I actually didn't get to do much gaming when I was young. I grew up on the Colville Indian Reservation in Eastern Washington, and I was kind of the only person I knew who was really into, like nerdy tabletop stuff. Most everybody else was like basketball was the big thing, so I didn't really get to play very much until like getting to like college actually. So more like I had the idea of what tabletop gaming was, but didn't really actually get to try it until I was older. So like for me, it's more like I don't know, like sort of bringing this idealized thought of what it could have been when I was younger, so I didn't really get to. That's about it.
We have another question in the chat. They'd like to know what some of the core storytelling and role-playing themes of Coyote and Crow are.
Well, for me, they're mostly because the game is set as the ice from the big great event begins to recede. They are there are geopolitical conflicts based around climate change and the end of an ice age. There's a great deal of political intrigue. Anywhere you have a secret police, there's going to be that kind of thing going on. There's also the problem of entrenched political leadership, opposing cultural values. A lot of it is caused by climate, by a change in climate. And theoretically, if you want to play that way, the emergence of monsters. Those were, the main ones I worked with. What about you, Derek?
Yeah, but there's no like unpopulated frontier. There's not a great deal of exploration except for when talking about the ice wall to the north, which is an uninhabited region. Um, Definitely for me, like kind of the core RPG activity is getting involved in this political intrigue. We have a number of different very powerful nations with very different views on how the world should work. And so while the art and the imagery oftentimes lends itself to a little bit of like, it looks a little bit like a utopia, it's all about the dark underbelly and exploring that as characters. So, like when I was writing the Pacific Northwest culture, this region is on the verge of a civil war due to class differences. And so if you're playing, up here in the Pacific Northwest, then that's probably going to be the central theme of your stories is these class differences and things like that.
I think as I'm just saying, speaking as a Comanche person, maybe it's the same for you guys, but our politics are Byzantine, like for real. And I think that was really inspirational in writing this because in real native life, we have very complicated political intrigue going on for real, and that this and real conflicts between groups with opposing values. Um, and for me, that was really inspirational in a lot of the things I wrote and how things were set up with the different, when I was writing on the different cultures.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing I liked, most, like I said, because I'm coming in as a visual artist, defining looks of things, not so much like the world building, like politically. But I like the fact that Coyote and Crow is not a utopia. Like Derek said, it has sort of the set dressing that might appear to be a utopia, but it is not. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about it most. Is it is a grounded look at like our societies because, like we already said, we're incredibly complex and we don't always agree on things. Like as a Ganyakahaga, we have a very structured system of government that we're more than willing to bring to everyone else because that's how things should work. And if you don't like it, we'll make you like it. But I digress. But yeah, that's one of the things I really liked a lot about like the world building is how nuanced and the world actually is. I appreciate it.
And I guess I'll say, as far as the core book is concerned, the assumption in the core book is that you're going to be from the city of Cahokia and you're going to be a member of the Sieta, which is what Wiote was talking about, the secret police, basically. So, yeah, like your characters aren't even necessarily morally clean. They are part of this structure and have to deal within it. So.
It's a really good segue into my next question. So Coyote and Crow's setting features many elements from different indigenous cultures. And what was it like to collaborate with so many artists and writers from different nations across all of North America? To me personally, I think this is the most mind-boggling and wonderful part of this project.
Well, I okay, I have one complaint. Originally, I made everything in Comanche. Everything I wrote was in Comanche. And we actually had this, a member of our team, Will Thompson, worked out the language for Cahokia and for the central cultures and replaced almost all of my original Comanche. So we all try to have our hegemony. I think all of us kind of think that our tribe is how, we should run X, Y, and Z, which is completely understandable. That was the lack of complete Comanche hegemony is my complaint. No, but it was really great. I mean, it was really a magical experience for me to work with all these different nations, with people from all these different nations and see what we have in common and what we really differ on. And it was really fascinating. Connor and I had some interesting discussions about numbers, um, because different cultures ascribe different values to different numbers, different symbology. I mean, and not just native. I mean, like in Chinese, four is terrible, but in Comanche, four is the best. Um, we actually call it Hairoquetu, that's the last perfect. So the last perfect thing, that's four. So, I mean, it's interesting all the weird little friction because you learn stuff and it's thrilling to the brain, that friction. I mean, to my brain. Anyway, that was how I felt about it. What about you?
Was a really wonderful experience. As a kid who grew up as sort of an urban native, so most of my friends were not native also. There was always a hesitancy in talking about native stuff and, cultural stuff that's happening around me or history, just for fear that it would be fetishized or dismissed or something like that. And I never had that fear when working with a team on Coyote and Crow, and that was really nice. It was my first professional project, so it really set my expectations very high for how I could work with other people. I've done jobs since then. My teams have all been great, but still, when you're not dealing with other natives, there's that hesitancy that makes it just a little bit anxious talking about these kinds of things. Um, yeah. So yeah, it was a really wonderful experience for me.
Um, so for me, actually, since I came out of the project late, it was actually kind of a boon because a number of artists had actually done a lot of sort of design work and like prop work for elements like in the world, weapons and such. So I was able to kind of lean on what they had built and incorporate it into my work and kind of take what I was bringing to it, take what they have, and then build this sort of cohesive vision in my brain of what Coyote and Crow should be. Because we all have our ideas, and that was one of the things I appreciated the most. It's like I come from a background that's a lot of collaborative. I worked in video games before this, and so I'm used to working with large teams where a lot of people bringing stuff to a project. So for me, it was actually just a normal part of the pipeline, and so taking something that someone else had already done and adding my twist to it, I thought was actually really really cool. I actually worked. I want to say it was Brian did a lot of the weapon props designs for Kite and Crow, and I used his designs in the weapons on the this game screen. So like I designed the outfits of the characters, but all the weapons that are in that game screen image are his designs. So yeah, and I think there's one that wasn't. It was like a staff that one of the guys in the back is holding. Uh, to me, that's actually a two-spirit person. So it's like guys, it's not the right uh, phrase, but that staff is also built on the designs that Brian had done. So it was really cool to work with other people in that way, even though we weren't talking and collaborating that way, using what they had established.
I have a follow-up question. What's your guys' favorite thing in Coyote and Crow? It could be like a character or a class or a setting or a weapon or what have you.
This feels like a cheat, but I'm tempted to just say the art. The stuff by Sara Carones, the stuff by Keith Jim and Jeffrey Verigi and the other artists we have. Like as a writer, I'm very inspired by the visual. Like I was looking at a lot of the art while I was writing my stuff and kind of imagining what the technology would look like and how that would affect the people. And so the art was really what drew me into it initially. And there were just some amazing pieces. Yeah, like well, one of my favorites. I don't know. Describing a piece of art now. Was a piece by Keith Jim, who drew kind of a tour group looking like going through a forest, and one of them is raising a hand indicating a holographic wolf that's projecting out of a tree, and that was just an amazing piece of art that inspired a lot of my writing.
I came in, there was no art when I started. I started before there was no art. That makes me sound really old. Before the first caveman, before the first Cro-Magnon scratched on the cave wall, I was there. But my favorite thing that I did, and this is just, it's still my favorite thing, and I feel kind of ashamed at my pridefulness, but it's still my favorite thing are the woolly mammoths, are the Moby Matsai, um, the the super intelligent woolly mammoths, and they have the brown noise. And I was proud of thinking of that, because they in real life elephants sing all the time, and a lot of it is beyond the range of human hearing. And that's why I thought, well, maybe they could have the brown noise and make people soil themselves. So that was anyway. I'm a simple woman, and I I like a woolly mammoth. And I like, and I'll honestly, I love all the friends that I've met working on this. I mean, really, that's probably my real favorite thing. Um, so Derek and Saudi may be my favorite. They come right after the woolly mammoth.
I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but the three of us have become kind of the unofficial ambassadors of Coyote and Crow. We've been asked to do a number of these speaking engagements, so we've
Yeah.
made good friendships here.
I'm definitely willing to take a number two position behind the woolly mammoth there. So I also enjoy potty humor. Like you said, for me, I think my favorite thing really is, like you said, the fact that we were able to collaborate with so many other native and indigenous artists from all over, who brought their vision to this world, because for a long time as a native artist, it was just me. Like I worked in the game industry in Seattle in 2007, 2011, and I don't know that I actually met another native game dev the entire time. And for the longest time, it just felt like it was just me. And because of these projects, I've got to meet and work with so many more uh, indigenous artists that I never would have met before. Because, in my head, I was always just some kid from the res that I wasn't even a part of that reservation. So I was like an outcast in a small society that's technically outcast within the United States. So that's what I like about this is it brought us together in a way that I had never thought was possible before.
They say that the real reward is the friends you make along the way. I couldn't resist.
And the potty humor.
And the body humor along the way. Um, so tabletop role-playing games have seen a huge surge in popularity in recent years. Do you have any advice for folks who are interested in creating their own tabletop role-playing games, or how you get into playing tabletop role-playing games?
Well, I mean, my useless piece of advice is if you want to do it, just do it. But as far as writing role-playing games, like for me, like it really was just sort of seeing that opportunity and taking it. Um, having a long background in them, I sort of understood, what sort of writing a role-playing game was looking for. So, read a lot of role-playing games if you want to try and write them. Um, understand mechanics and how they affect the world, how they affect the physics and the reality of the world. As far as getting into role-playing games, probably the best way is to find a group of friends who also want to get into it and just try it out. But a lot of people just don't have access to that, particular friend group. So I would recommend checking out the libraries. Libraries oftentimes have games that run or bulletin boards where people post for games. If that doesn't work out for you, there's also people who run games professionally that you can find online. So you can play games, over Zoom, kind of like this, for a relatively small fee. And, if you really want to try it out, that's a good way to get started. But the best really way is really to sit around a table with your friends, in my opinion. So.
Derek said everything I would have said. Just do it. And also the one thing is check your local game stores. Depending on where you live. I know there are many in Albuquerque, and they all have a bulletin board of people looking for someone to play a game with them. And if there isn't one, a bulletin board, a note on a bulletin board looking for someone, put one up. Say, I would like to play an RPG with somebody. I mean, and you'll find them from the Jane Austen game until, Coyote and Crow, D&D, whatever. Write down your little heart's desire on an index card and pin it to the board. And chances are you will be amply rewarded. But anything you want to do, this is my general blanket encouragement, like a terrible, cheesy poster in a counselor's office. If there's something you'd like to try, if there's something you'd like to do it, try it. There's no, you'll learn something either way, whether you like it or not. If it, just do it, just try it. And I'm encouraging everyone to try everything. That's my advice.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I kind of fell into it. Like it was not my intention to get into gaming at all. Like I originally went to school for animation, and I realized that wasn't for me. I started just working more on illustration. Like I've always drawn. That's mostly how I made my friends, was through art. So like if you have friends that you make art with, you have a potential crew of players that you might be able to play with right there. If you have, a story idea that you want to make, you just start writing it down little bit by little bit. I have a friend who spent the last few years like coming up with his own world setting for a tabletop game that he may or may not put out, but like that's been something that he's wanted to do for a while. It's there's a lot of people out there who have projects they didn't think they could get done because they didn't think anybody would be interested. And as soon as they put it out, people are like, oh my God, why has no one done this before? And that's, you might have that idea that someone has been looking for and that has known who else might be looking for the same thing. And you'll build communities that way. And then next thing you know, you have, a game that you've put out and your name is out there and people are like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. But, you won't know unless you try it. Unfortunately, not everything succeeds. I've failed a lot too, but it's like, you don't know unless you try. And, like they say, the worst thing anyone can say is no. And you don't have to take no for an answer all the time. So just keep at it. And even if it's just you and your friends, you can build your own game anytime you want. So, all right. That's about all I got.
And as a word of encouragement, I don't think any of us thought this Native American focused role playing game was going to be nearly as successful as it became. Like this took off in such a way that all of us were unprepared for. I also just noticed in the comments you pointed at coyoteandcrow.net. Thank you for that. But for people who want to check out the book right now, actually from now on, it is Pay What You Want, the PDF. So you can look at it and decide how much it's worth to you then.
Thank you so much for that plug. I did not know that the PDF was on a pay for you want pay what you want system. So that is really encouraging, especially for people who might not be able to drop X amount of money for a very thick book, thick, beautiful book.
Yeah.
Um, uh, we
Just say
have,
that just so you all know that
yes.
that was a decision that Connor made at the beginning of this month. So for Native Heritage Month,
Mm.
and now going forward, that is the thing.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to reiterate what Derek said. We had no idea that it was going to take off. We were just hoping enough to make enough on our Kickstarter to get some copies printed. That was absolutely our it on like our fondest dream was at that point was to make $18,000 so we could get it printed. And we had no clue that it was going to be what it was and get nominated for Nebula. And um it's partly huge is my fault because I kept telling I kept telling Connor every time he showed it to me, the font needs to be bigger. The font needs to be bigger. And finally he said, we can't afford to ship it if we make the font any bigger. Because I have really poor vision. I'm partially I have visual impairments. I'm partially blind. And so I kept going, no, we need it bigger. And he was like, we can't make it any bigger, Leonie. Stop saying that. Stop telling me that. So I'm partly responsible for for the sheer size.
I see a hand raised from someone in the audience. Sego, are you able to put in the chat your question? Possibly? Not, I might just hit allow to talk. Let's see here if this will work. Sego, are you there? Going once, going twice. Nope, I'm gonna go ahead and lower your hand. If you still wanted to ask a question, you can put it in the chat. There we go. The hard copy of the book is also available at many friendly local game stores. Yes, thank you, Scott. It absolutely is. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. I did want to ask one more question, just to give you guys a chance to plug some of the things that you're working on now and what future plans hold for Coyote and Crow beyond the base game.
Connor is the keeper of the keys as far as what's going into the future of Coyote and Crow. I can tell you he has a lot of irons in the fire, but due to NDAs, I can't actually talk about much of them. But you can expect to see other Coyote and Crow board games, other format games, and additional content for the RPG over the future. As far as me, I still take contracts for writing for RPGs. I've written for 7th Sea Second Edition. I've written for Rivers of London and a couple other games. But mostly my future holds finishing my degree in Native American Studies at Evergreen State College and raising my beautiful daughter. Those are my big plans right now. So.
Well, I am primarily a writer. I do As again, we can't really say too much about what's going on with Coyote and Crow. Connor's the boss. But there are lots of things, games, novels, stories, anthologies, all set in this universe. For me, I have some non-Coyote and Crow. I actually have one Coyote and Crow short story available on Drive-Through RPG. And I have a novel that just came out, As Many Ships as Stars, and that's available at many libraries already. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, that kind of thing, as well as another book, The Root and the Seed, coming out on Black Friday. So the day after Thanksgiving, it will be available from Greasy Grass Press, in audiobook and ebook format. Those will be the early releases. And this upcoming year, I'm committed to a biography in graphic novel form of LaDonna Harris, the activist LaDonna Harris, as well as two novels and the short story, two more, and comics from Green Archer Press, a story arc about a Native American superhero called the Clock. That is a reboot of the Golden Age character, the Clock, but now completely different. So that's what I have going.
Yeah, let's see, projects, stuff you can see that I've already done that's out right now. Of course, some work I have on Coyote and Crow, a couple, another game set in the universe is called Wolves. I did a bunch of the artwork for Wolves, as far as like the background images and the resources within the game. There's also a video game that I worked on over pandemic called Hill Agency Purity Decay. It's an indigenous, we call it a cyber noir. It's a throwback to the old point and click style adventure games. That's available on Steam and itch.io. It's a indigenous owned studio out of Ontario. So we worked on that all remote during pandemic. It's last I checked, it was currently on display at the Mopop in Seattle. Also, I've done some artwork for Magpie Games. No, I did some writing for Magpie Games on the Avatar role-playing game. Last Airbender Avatar, not Blue Cat Avatar. And I did some artwork for Monty Cook Games. They both start with an M. That's why I got them confused. And I have a small business that I run with my brother called Rising Suns Media. RisingSunsMedia.com, Suns with an O. We mostly do like my art and stuff. Lately, we've been doing some indigenous futurism inspired, like all over print stuff. And I've been having a lot of fun. We actually got to do a couple fashion shows, one at Iacon in Denver. And another, yeah, there we go, right there. So I created all the artwork for those on my iPad. You can do some really cool stuff with an iPad. And then I'm hiding in the background there. We got to do another fashion show at the Muckleshoot Casino about 2 weeks ago, and we're actually getting ready to do another one in Tacoma at the end of the month. And we got a few do like in-person vending events in Seattle at powwows and different events. So yeah, if you want to check out the stuff, RisingSunsMedia.com. That's my personal work. And if you want the other stuff, you can hit Steam for Hill Agency, and Coyote and Crow you can get at your local gaming store or Amazon if you have to. And I do commissions and whatnot as well.
Yeah, speaking of which, he made cover.
He
made the cover for As Many Ships as Stars.
I did do the cover for As Many Ships as Stars. So, yeah, that was fun.
All
So,
right. Thank you guys so much for being here. We've got, ooh, Leody is sharing her screen. There it
oh,
is.
there it is. As many ships as stars. So, anyway, also some of Sadi's fine work. So,
I did not choose that font.
no, he did not. Neither one of us chose that font. Thank you.
I just checked our catalog and we don't have it right now, but I will see about trying to get it added to our catalog.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right. We have 4 minutes left. Audience, if you have any other burning questions, I do want to read some compliments that were put in the chat first. Kayla said that she really appreciated your comments about Dungeons and Dragons being really Western focused. She is, I think it's Tsimshian, and playing D&D, and she really struggled to find the words to voice the challenges that she had with the game, and you did it very well and eloquently. So lots of love for the cover of Coyote and Crow and how gorgeous it is. And I think it's Lisa just wanted to say thank you for the amazing book. She got it on Kickstarter and she can't wait to play it with her kids when they're old enough. Uh, and Mars said Miigwech, which I believe is Ojibwe for thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We'll go ahead and stick around for a few minutes more in case anybody else wanted to have a chat, ask any questions of our creators. Otherwise, we will see you all next time. Thank you again for being here and have a good rest of your day. Nice discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Samish is weird. We have sevens as a letter.
Hey, I'm impressed. We need more letters. Um, we need more letters.
Mhm.
I, we don't even have our spelling standardized yet. So we're still having these discussions about what we need to do for our, well, because English letters aren't designed for our sounds.
There's no good letter for, which is the sound that comes up a lot in Samish.
We usually use a question mark for our glottal stops.
That's what our sevens are. I think it's because we put it on keyboards before we had like the question mark without the dot, which is I think the international symbol for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
I just put there. I'm known for my sloppy spelling, so
Is it?
but no, like, and I feel like R is wrong in Comanche because our our R's are ud are like udda, it's udda go, and some people write D, some people write R, and neither one is actually sounds really right, you know. So that's anyway. My complaint. I always have. I'm always. I'm just gripey, but
Our language is actually pretty. It's written in French phonetics originally, but it's pretty simple. Like, for our glottal stops, to just put an apostrophe after stuff. So,
Mhm.
like,
that's
my
a good
name
idea.
technically has an apostrophe after the A, so at the beginning. So SA glottal stop, sop day. You know,
Okay. Ah,
you know.
okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and end the webinar. It's 4 o'clock. Did you guys want to drop back in to using the panelist links to do a debrief?
Oh,
Sure.
I would love to, but I actually have to get to the
To the next
Jody?
thing that you're on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
part of the
conquer.
public
Win.
art.
Hmm.
What?
Win all the public art.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm on the selection committee. I'm not.
Oh, select yourself.
I didn't apply.
Oh,
I didn't know about that one, so I didn't apply. Next time.
Mhm.
next time. All right. All
All
right.
right. Well, thank
Yeah,
you again.
Thank you.
Hmm.
It was good to
Bye,
see
everyone.
everybody.
Good to meet you all. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you.
Well,
See ya. Bye.
Bye.